Cottonwood, Arizona, to be held May 5th, 2020 at 6 p.m. If we could please have our deputy clerk or clerk please take the roll.
Councilmember Halls?
Here.
Councilmember Henry?
Here.
Councilmember Howdigi?
Here.
Councilmember Nairn?
Here.
Councilmember Wilden?
Here.
Vice Mayor Matthews? Mayor Alinsky?
I'm here. Thank you. Okay, we'll have our deputy clerk then spin the camera to face the flag, and I'd ask everyone to please join me in the pledge. Which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a brief summary of current events by the mayor, city council, and/or city manager. Do we have anything to report from our council? No council members have anything to report. I guess you've all been doing your job then and just staying home, right? All right. I just have a few things to report. We all know what's going on with the executive orders from the governor, so I won't go into any detail on that. But regarding our community task force, we have merged that now into an economic recovery task force. So we've added a few folks, and a few folks have dropped off. So we've only really had just one meeting as a recovery task force, but I think we're getting a lot of good folks on there to try to help us. It's very, very much focused just on Cottonwood businesses and trying to do everything we can as a city to assist our businesses as they reopen and make sure that the city can help coordinate resources to them and just be a support to make sure that hopefully my hope is that most all of our businesses can reopen here in the next few weeks. And I'm afraid we may lose some, but we want to make sure that we know who they are, and we've at least reached out to offer assistance to them. So that's really what I've been up to. And I believe our manager is here, although I can't see it, but if you've got more to report, that would be great.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just a couple items. Please, everybody feel free to go to the Yavapai website, Yavapai County's website for updates. We're up to 139 positive cases, 2 deaths with 11 recoveries. Yavapai County is one of the few counties now reporting recoveries. So I was glad to see that. I just want to talk briefly about those executive orders because it's really important for our businesses that currently retail can be open for curbside or pre-orders. They just can't let people into their business. But on Friday, retail can open. There are some guidelines on our website and the governor's website to talk about how to reopen, but retail can reopen up on Friday, along with barbers and salons and businesses like that. And then Monday, the 11th, restaurants can open up. And that's basically almost any establishment that serves food. We had it clarified today that even bars that serve food, as long as they serve food, that is, they've been given the green light to go ahead. So our restaurants will open up on Friday. The other items, the pools, the parks, those kinds of things, we're still waiting for direction from the governor's office before that we open them up. The city will begin to open up in the next 2 weeks. And we'll have more press releases about that as we make decisions based on, again, the advice of the Yavapai County Health Department and, of course, the governor's office. But we're making plans to open up. It'll be a slow open up. Programming is still weeks away before we do group things, but we'll begin to open up things for individuals to do here in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned on that. And that's all I have to report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corbin. Okay, next on the agenda is proclamation. We have one proclamation to read to you tonight. It's declaring the month of May as Bicycle Awareness Month. So whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans, and whereas today Americans are turning to the bicycle more than ever before as a means of becoming a part of the solution in our nation's quest to better our citizens' health, improve our environmental quality, promote our energy independence, and do overwhelmingly support improving our quality of life and providing quality recreational opportunities for families and our visitors. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists and its chapters have declared May as Bike Month since 1956, and whereas the City of Cottonwood Bicycle Advisory Committee, our Valley's chapter of the League, and independent cyclists throughout Arizona are calling for greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities, and to increase enjoyment for all. Now, therefore, I, Tim Alinsky, Mayor of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, do hereby proclaim May 2020 as Bicycle Awareness Month and urge all citizens, schools, city departments, and civic groups to support bicycling and for motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists to work together to share our streets, roads, and trails. So get out there and ride your bikes, folks. And there is a challenge that takes place here in the Verde Valley. The Yavapai County Community Health puts it on, and it's a bike to work challenge where we all join teams and collect points by bicycling to work or bicycling for fun. In years past, they put together certain events that you could attend on your bicycle that you could earn extra points. They're not sure exactly how they're going to make that happen this year with the coronavirus. However, the challenge is still going on. So if you want more information, I would encourage you to reach out to the Yavapai County Community Health and register. You can register as an individual or as a team. And there's a trophy, a traveling trophy that you can win. Yours truly made the trophy. It's pretty neat. It's made out of recycled bicycle parts. And unfortunately, the City of Cottonwood has never been able to display that trophy. It's always been Yavapai County. So we need to make that change. Hopefully we can do that this year. So I would encourage you all to register. And that's it for that. No more proclamations. We have approval of the minutes next of the regular meeting of April 21, 2020. And I would move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Wilden seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Next is the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council. Will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence. So we have 5 items tonight under consent agenda. First is a 1-year extension of agreement with Reese & Sons Tire Inc. for vehicle maintenance and repair services. Item 2 is a 1-year renewal of the contract for fiscal auditing services with Lombard and Associates PLC, a division of the Pun Group LLP. Item 3 is a cooperative use of the City of Peoria contract for investment management services with PFM Asset Management LLC through the Strategic Alliance for Volume Expenditures Purchasing Cooperative. Item 4 is liquor license applications for Robert D. Conlon, agent for the Belfry Brewing Company. Number 12 restaurant and number 03 microbrewery to be located at 791 North Main Street. Number 5 is a liquor license application. Number 12 restaurant for Jesus Robles Halloween, agent for Bocha's Cafe located at 2181 East State Route 89A. Are there any items that a council member would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? And Marianne Jimenez, our clerk, did you hear from any member of the public who would like an item pulled?
No, Mayor, I did not.
Okay, then I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, the mayor made the motion. I believe Councilmember Holst seconded it.
That's correct.
Hope I'm right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. And we now move into new business. And again, if I could have everyone mute their mics unless you're speaking, that would be great. New business, we have 4 items tonight under new business. First item is resolution number 3053, establishing a plan for providing infrastructure and services to the Sawmill Gardens patio homes annexation area. And I believe we'll turn that over to Mr. Manager. I'm at a disadvantage here, folks, because I can't see everybody. I see Mr. Davis is on my phone at least, but I can't see everybody else. So I'm not sure if Scott Ellis is going to handle this or.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to turn it right over to Scott Ellis, your Community Development Director, and
Okay.
I believe Gary on the line.
Great.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Council, good evening. Scott Ellis, Community Development Director. Resolution number 3053 is the required plan, infrastructure and services plan for any annexation that occurs. This is in ARS that we have to develop a 10-year plan for any annexation we do. This is for the Sawmill Gardens annexation area, which you'll see further down on the agenda. Basically, the area is already serviced by city water, and they are on a septic system, so there's not any improvements that the city has to go in there and do. The streets will be maintained by the homeowners association. They're not going to be dedicated to city streets for our maintenance to handle. If they ever want to connect to city sewer, which is not the case right now, they all have septic, they will do so at their expense at the date, but we are not going to make them connect on our end. So it's not a requirement. It's just if they ever decide that, then they're going to be on the hook for time. So that's what this plan is here. Any questions on that from the mayor or council?
No questions. Okay, just for clarification, that they would need to connect on their own at their own expenses, a part of the annexation agreement, correct?
It's not an annexation agreement. It's an infrastructure and services plan.
Okay.
And they are aware of that. The homeowners association and homeowners have been explained that. But again, I do want to reiterate, we will not make them connect. It's just that they're.
I have a question.
Yes.
Please.
So the agreement, there, it does say that the infrastructure and services will be provided to serve anticipated new development within 10 years after the date. And then underwater, it just says that the water facilities will be maintained by the city of Cottonwood. So that kind of tagging on the mayor's question, if they do continue developing that area, is there additional water infrastructure that they will be responsible for building? And could we perhaps include that specifically in the agreement, or did I miss the language?
This development is actually fully built out. There's really no room for them to come in and do anything else. The real only way that could happen is somebody completely bought every property in there, demolish it. But this is a fully built out development with no room to so this is more of a technicality and legal requirement brought down from the state on the and to reiterate too, the city water is already in place there and there's no new connections that have to be established.
And this is Steve, if I may. Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Steve Horton, City Attorney. I just want to emphasize, unlike many of the other projects that are under discussion right now, pending in various stages, this particular annexation does not involve an agreement because there was no need for one for precisely the reason Scott mentioned. It's a fully developed area. The services are already in. The sewer is available at homeowners or the HOA's expense. So just to clarify, there is no agreement involved here or even pending.
If I may, Mayor, please.
Please.
I appreciate that clarification, both Mr. Ellis and Mr. Horton. My only concern, I guess I was thrown by the phrase that just says that infrastructure and services will be provided to serve anticipated new development within the annexed area within 10 years after the date on which the annexation becomes final, which led me to believe that there will be new development, or there is.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Henry, that is confusing, and I think what we did probably mistakenly is lift the statutory language. That's the requirement from the statute. We're annexing a fully developed area. We probably should have made that clear that there is no anticipated new development for this annexation area.
Correct.
If I may cut in here,
Please.
can you hear me? So like Mr. Ellis said, if something new is gonna be built there, they're gonna have to knock something down. Is that correct?
Yes, council member, it is correct. It is a fully built out development.
Right.
Really no room to come in and do anything else. It was a planned development in the county that was fully built out with their PAD, planned area development zoning in place.
Okay, thank you.
And that's to be just a question. That's really more a matter of law that we have to provide the infrastructure within a 10-year time frame. Is that why that hit the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, this is Steve. We have to have a plan for it. The plan doesn't necessarily mean a commitment to do it in any given case, but there has to be, we have to show that we have addressed it, that we've thought it through and have at least a tentative plan for what's going to happen or what it's going to look like in 10 years.
Got it. Thank you.
And because the annexation statute, I think, was really written with undeveloped land in mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And the agreement essentially is the resolution that we're looking at this evening. That spells out the agreement between the two parties, correct? The sawmill and the city.
I would call it the statute calls it, and I would urge us to refer to it as a plan, policy, or procedure. It actually isn't an agreement because they've consented to it. They understand it. The homeowners do. But it isn't in a conventional sense an agreement.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any more questions for Mr. Horton or Mr. Ellis? Okay.
I don't have a question. I wish it did state clearly that the parties do not anticipate any new development. I'm worried that I'm worried that it's not clear. And that's it. I appreciate the legal explanation. I understand that the statute requires it. It worries me that the wording is not clear with regard to that build out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. If there's no other questions or comments from council, then I think we're ready for a motion. I'll go ahead and motion to approve resolution number 3053, adopting an infrastructure and services plan for the Sawmill Gardens patio homes annexation.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Nairn seconded. If we could please have the clerk take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Henry,
No.
Councilmember Halls,
Yes.
Councilmember Howdy,
Yes.
Councilmember Nairn, Councilmember Nairn,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews, we can't hear you, Councilmember Matthew, Vice Mayor, I'm sorry. Thumbs up. If you approve, thumbs down. If it's a no vote, Vice Mayor Matthews,
The Vice Mayor's having a really difficult time hearing.
Mayor Alinsky,
Yes. Yes. Yes, I vote yes.
I believe the motion carried.
Okay. Did you hear my vote, Mary Ann?
Yes, I did. In fact, I guess you got an echo back from me because I didn't ask you again. I did hear you the first time.
Okay. I don't know that I'll ever get used to Zoom or any of these platforms that we're using. And I'm sorry that the Vice Mayor can't quite hear us all. But anyway, given all that, we'll say the motion's passed, and we'll move on to ordinance number 676, which is, bear with me here. Ordinance number 676, annexing certain territory contiguous to the city limits of the city of Cottonwood, being approximately 10 acres in size, commonly known as the Sawmill Gardens Patio Homes neighborhood, pursuant to the provisions of ARS 9-471, and adopting city zoning of PAD, planned area development, on the annexation territory. This is the first reading. I believe we'll hand it back over again to Mr. Ellis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Again, Scott Ellis, Community Development Director. Ordinance 676 is the Sawmill Gardens Patio Homes Annexation first reading. If you remember from previous meetings, this was brought to you for consideration to annex a small portion of developed community, approximately 58 homes with some open space areas and a small portion of Yavapai County right-of-way, which would become our right-of-way. This process went fairly quick. We did the notification with the petitions for signatures. We received quick response from the homeowners. We got up to so far about 70% of the number of homeowners and the valuation of the property, which we're required to get over 50% of each one. This was with minimal effort on the city's part. We only mailed one time all of the petitions we signed and returned. So the majority of the property owners are on board. Anybody else we haven't heard from, we've not received any opposition from any of the homeowners. Any questions that they had, they were satisfied with our answers, and really majority on board with doing this. So this just is the first reading of that annexation to bring it into the city. If approved at the second reading, it would go into effect within 30 days after that. Back to you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions from you or the council?
Thanks, Mr. Ellis. Do we have any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. If there's nothing else from staff, and I don't assume that we have anyone from the Homeowners Association with us this evening. Marianne, can you clarify?
No, there is no one here, and I didn't receive any comments to pass on to the council tonight.
Okay. Well, as a reminder, this is just the first reading, so there won't be any action taken tonight. We'll bring this back for action in a couple weeks, I believe. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on and have the clerk read resolution, or excuse me, ordinance number 676 by title only, please.
Ordinance number 676, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, annexing certain territory contiguous to the city limits of the city of Cottonwood, being approximately 10 acres in size, Sawmill Gardens patio homes, pursuant to the provisions of ARS 9-471, and adopting city zoning of PAD, planned area development, on the annexation territory. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, item 3 under new business is proposed agreement with the United States Department of Interior Bureau of Reclamation to conduct a direct potable water reuse study for the Riverfront Water Reclamation Facility. I believe we have Mr. Whitmer with us this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of council, as most of you are aware, we in the past have informally kind of mentioned the subject of direct potable reuse and looking at what it would take to convert the Riverfront plant to direct potable reuse. We reached out and talked to several consultants, as well as the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality and the Bureau of Reclamation. Both the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality and the Bureau of Reclamation were very excited about the proposition that we laid out before them to actually do an evaluation of converting or looking at what it would take to convert the Riverfront wastewater treatment plant to a direct potable reuse plant. This contract here is a contract with the Bureau of Reclamation. We would do a joint funding agreement with them. The total cost of the evaluation study would be $150,000, which would be a 50-50 match or a 50-50 split. Our half of that $150,000 or $75,000 could be made up with in-kind efforts from the city itself, and we've already been undertaking a number of things with the Bureau of Reclamation since January, and this goes back and will capture all of those efforts that we've already expended at this point in time. So that's what this is.
Can you provide a little more information about how much of that $75,000 you believe we've already used up?
I'm not sure at this point in time. I'm guesstimating somewhere around 20,000. I think we'll actually do our 75,000 when we made almost 100% with in-kind services.
Okay. And so then what's the deliverable then, at the end of the study?
At the end of the study, we will have a report that outlines the feasibility of actually converting that plant, what it will take to convert that plant, what the output would be, and the recommendations for going forward should we decide to pursue it.
Okay, and I know that long ago when we were planning to build the plant, it was always part of the discussion to outfit it with direct potable reuse. And so all that said, I think many things made the cut when that facility was being constructed. So I'm curious if we have any idea what it would cost then to, as far as the improvements that would be necessary, what it would cost to convert that plant, such as it is to direct potable reuse.
At this time, no, we do not have an idea what it would cost.
Okay.
When we were looking at building the plant, the one component that was left out would not have taken up the direct potable reuse quality. That was just an advanced oxidation, which was to remove that additional 4 or 5% of the remaining pharmaceuticals that would be left there that would not be removed by the standard wastewater treatment process that we use there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But the cost of whatever would be, the funding for that, we could use the Water Development Fund as our source of funding for that, as well as we could get probably some additional matching dollars from the Bureau of Reclamation, who is very excited about this.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, what other facilities in the Southwest are using direct potable reuse?
In the state of Arizona, we would be the only municipality that would go to it if we were to pursue this. Right now, there's only one facility permitted in the state of Arizona. That's the city of Scottsdale has a drinking fountain that's permitted at their campus down in Scottsdale. So we would be the first municipality to do this if we were to actually go forward with it. There are 2 facilities over in California that are doing direct potable reuse right now. It's not no matter where you're at, it'll never be 100% direct potable reuse.
Right.
Whatever is produced at that plant would be blended back into the system at some percentage. You've got a facility in Texas that's doing it as well. And those are about the only 3 that are out there right now, but there are a number of them that are on the boards that are going through the same feasibility evaluation that we're looking at doing right now.
Okay. So for minimal expense from the city, other than staff time, you're saying that we could get a study completed in partnership with the Bureau and just get some more information on what it would take to outfit that facility. Correct?
Exactly. That's correct.
Okay.
And any fundings that would come, that'd be out of the Water Development Fund.
Got it. Okay.
Are we able to, are we the ones that are able to determine what's in kind?
They have actually the Bureau of Reclamation does it, but having worked with them on a number of projects similar to this, not direct potable reuse, but in-kind different studies that we've done in the past, pretty much anything we do is considered to be in kind.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from any other council members?
I'm curious, Tom, you said mixing it with the output. What does that mean if it's direct potable and we're going to mix it with the normal output? Can you explain what that means?
Yes. In other words, like anywhere in the city, we have multiple wells that are supplying water to the entire area. This would just be similar to that. It would be, you'd look at it similar to another well, and it would just be blended into the entire system. So to say that one home was receiving 100% direct potable reuse, no, that wouldn't happen. It would just be blended back into the system with all the other wells coming in from the groundwater wells. So
Okay,
it would reduce the amount of water that we would have to pump.
okay. I was confused. I thought you were saying you would mix it with the affluent water that we would be releasing for non-potable purposes, but you clarified that. Thank you.
Any other
Can
questions?
anybody hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, I'm actually connected fully. That's great. No, I don't have any questions, but I really like this. I think it's the way we need to go.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments from council members? Obviously, we'll have many more discussions on this if we decide to go through with this. So we'll have more opportunity for discussion and input from the public.
Ultimately, if we decide to go through that, there will be one of the components on the backside of this would be an educational outreach component that was be vital, because as you know, the perception of going to direct potable reuse, there's the yuck factor, and that's something that you have to overcome. And so, you know, some of the things that people are doing, similar to what Scottsdale is doing right now, they've got a drinking fountain that is 100% direct potable reuse. And it's available right now. It's just available to those at the water campus. But one of the things that we've discussed with the Bureau of Reclamation and with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality is to set up a pilot program such that you can invite the public to come down. They can do tastings. They can do all kinds of things to gain an acceptance of what's being laid out for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. I think, yeah, before we were ever to unveil this opportunity, we'd have to do an awful lot of public education and get some buy-in, I think. But I'm with the Vice Mayor on this. I think it's an important next step for folks that live in an arid climate, as we all do, especially now that things are heating up. Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else from any of the other council members, then I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the proposed agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation to conduct the Riverfront Water Reclamation Facility direct potable reuse study.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Hulse made the motion. It looks like Councilmember Hodegi seconded it. If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry,
Yes.
Councilmember Hulse,
Yes.
Councilmember Howdy,
Yes.
Councilmember Naren,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews,
Yes.
Mayor Alinsky.
Yes, thank you.
Motion carried. At this time, Mayor, I would like to get clarification from the Vice Mayor on how he voted on resolution number 3053.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, we're nearing the end here, folks. We have one more item for discussion, and that is the COVID-19 impact on the city's revenues, future plans, and projects. So take it away, Mr. Corbin.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked Matt to get a quick little PowerPoint to kind of guide the conversation. Matt, are you able to share your screen? All right, next slide. So just in case you haven't heard, we're having, we expect to have significant revenue issues, which I'll talk about in detail, as a result of many of our businesses being shut down over the last 6 and now going on 8 weeks. So part of I want to talk just briefly about my mindset because I think that's important. So we, at the end of January, had a budget surplus of 7% for sales tax. So we were running 5% above what we had budgeted. We had budgeted a 2% increase. So we were doing very well going into that. We had begun all of our department budget meetings, and we're talking about what we were going to do here with the city and the great things we were going to get accomplished, the CIP projects, equipment, sidewalks, and those kinds of things. Well, this happened, and now we're expecting it to go the other way. And again, I'll go into numbers in a second. But when I go back to why I do what I do, one of my primary jobs is to bring you guys a balanced budget for you guys to review, to adjust, to make adjustments, to make changes to. But my first step is to bring a balanced budget to you. And this council has been nothing but very clear to me on creating a very conservative budget, a fiscally conservative budget. And many of the items over the last year and a half now have been about controlling the size of the government and the employee payroll and events, and just really to keep an eye on that. So I just added that. And then the next slide, I'll never forget this, and I'll just share this from my performance evaluation, where when we talked about the budget, I was told that I might be able to do a little better. So next slide. That's kind of the backdrop. And then the other thing is, why am I worried about the revenue loss? Why can't we absorb it? I was talking to some of my other city managers, Sedona is going to take a significant loss this next year, millions of dollars there, but they're expecting. Camp Verde, of course, Jerome is taking a significant hit. And they're not quite reacting the same way I am. And really it goes back to this fund balance, where our general fund balance is less than 6 million, very low. And if you look on the next slide, it really shows where we've been and where we're at and where I believe council has been trying to get us to go back to. So the fund balance back in 2009, which is the gray line, was over 35 million. And in 2018, it was less than 10 million. And again, I believe last year was about 6 million. So one of my primary functions is to try to figure out how to add to that fund balance. Council, of course, about a year and a half ago, 2 years now, approved a sales tax increase, and about 85% of that goes into savings or CIP projects. So that's really the backdrop, is that my job has been to continue to keep a very fiscal, balanced, conservative budget. If we go on to the next slide, tell a little bit more about the story. So what are we projecting for this year? So we're actually projecting about a loss of 1.5% compared to the 2% budget. So we're expecting revenues to come in at more than $500,000 off of the mark, off of what we had budgeted. Now, the good news with that is we had actually just finished up our department budget meeting, so we kind of knew where the departments were going to come in, and we knew that we could get there with just a few, some minor adjustments. Next year's where it really becomes a bigger problem, where currently, Kirsten, is, and you'll see, by the way, this isn't meant to be a budget meeting. We'll get past this rather quickly, but this is the background. We're having our budget meeting, our first one on the 21st, where we'll really go into the numbers. So this is a little premature, and hopefully by the 21st, we will have March's numbers. But we're expecting about a $1.2 million loss in revenue for next year. That's what we're budgeting. And that's mostly just sales tax. We're expecting even lower numbers from our state shared sources, our HERF, our shared sales tax, our shared income tax, all those numbers from the state we expect to come down. It was kind of funny, shortly before COVID-19 hit, we had gotten a report from the league and from the state, and our state shared revenues were projected to go up total about $500,000. So we get a note from the state saying, hey, we're going to give City of Cottonwood about $500,000. About a week into COVID, we got an email saying, throw those numbers away. The new ones will be coming. So we were doing really well, but we've got to find that 1.2. So on the next slide, with the budget changes that we made, creating a very flat budget with no CIP, including things like the healthcare increase and all the staffing changes I had already made, we were still about $400,000 to the negative. So knowing that I had less than 2 months, or I have about 2 months left in this FY, and then of course we need to get ready for next year. So the reduction in force brings us in that we did the reduction in force is about 300,000, a little more than that. I'm recommending not to renew the chamber contract as is, but still setting aside money for marketing, which again, we'll talk about in a couple of weeks. But that saves about 130. The furloughs that we're doing through the end of June, we expect to save about $100,000, but that's not including our unemployment claims. So just so you know, because you hear a lot of things about the federal government reimbursing companies for those unemployment costs, because we're a government agency, we only get reimbursed at half, and we're self-insured. So the other half of the unemployment that gets paid out is actually paid out. Kirsten or Amanda or somebody cuts that check. So while private businesses have a lot of that covered, we only have about 50% of our unemployment costs covered through this crisis. Next slide. So we did some other things. We instituted early on a hiring freeze, a ban on travel and training, discretionary spending. We moved sidewalk projects that we had funded into next year just to make sure that that we do have the cash to do it, and including moving some pavement projects till after July 1. We did keep a couple. The pavement preservation for one of our neighborhoods is going to continue, but the road diet and the parking lot will start after July 1. Part of the, someone, it might have been Chief Gazelle, said, it's like we're really just punching in the water. Kirsten and I talked to many people, other city managers, finance people, the league, and everybody is projecting bigger losses than we are. We are actually projecting lower, and we're a little concerned, but we have some backup plans if we end up not having our revenues low enough. We do have plan B and C in our back pocket if we have to, that include moving and doing some other things. But the revenues come in about 2 months behind. So we won't have March numbers until the end of this month or closer. We're hoping to have them by our meeting on the 21st. And then really the big month is April, and we won't have those numbers until June, June. We believe that we have enough commerce in our business, enough retail, enough grocery stores, enough Walmart, Home Depot, those kinds of things, that we think it'll be less of an impact here in Cottonwood than it has been to some of our other surrounding communities. I've only really got 2 months to absorb the loss. If I wait till June to make any changes or react to the numbers, I will have missed any opportunity to make the needed changes for this month. Again, other benchmarks, the one I mailed out this morning, I think it was, or yesterday, showed a expected decline in the revenues of about 17%, and that was out of the Phoenix region. So they are expecting it to come back a year later, but pretty significant. And if you looked at the graph that I showed, that 17% one-year drop was greater than anything during the Great Recession. And then people say, well, the feds are gonna give us money. They're gonna make up for lost revenue. I haven't seen that yet, and I'm a little leery of trusting the federal governments to give us money. The last bill that I saw that is likely to get passed, if it does, really brings down payments to cities of $50,000 or greater. This last time it was down to $500,000, but small cities are not likely to get direct payment from the feds. We will have to apply through the state. And as much of the good stuff our governor's done, getting money for lost revenue is going to be a hard thing to make up. Our costs, because of COVID, have really been minor, and we've been able to absorb most of those. We're keeping track of them, and we will try to get reimbursed for any costs. But really, our biggest issue is a loss in revenue. Next slide. So the reason I put this on the agenda, I actually talked to my team about this a little while back, was that I have done a lot of these things right now. So I'm not recommending a traditional TVR. And that has a lot to do with the contracting, and I'll show you that on the next page. But It doesn't come really to council except during the budget process, which is in June or July. Most of the contracts for musicians and stages need to be secured and reserved now. There are organizations that have moved their stuff to the fall till October, November. And we need to, if we're going to move with the big stage and the music, we would need to do it now. I'm concerned about a second wave. And I'm also concerned that people will still be afraid to be in large groups and travel. Some sponsors have said yes. Law Tigers even added $2,000 to their contribution. Others have declined. I was not willing to sign any contracts, which is what I did last year, knowing that it was a traditional event in the city, and I felt like we would be able to cover the costs as we covered the majority of it last year. Next slide. I threw this in just to show, and I can't see it on my screen. I left the cash sponsorships, assuming we can get the sponsorships the same. At 40,000 is what we got. What I really was worried about was the merchandise sales, the bar sales, and then the passes. If 50% of the people show up to buy alcohol and passes and whatnot, it's about an $80,000 that I would have to find revenue for out of the general fund somewhere. If 75%, and I think that's high, it's still $40,000 not being covered, lost revenue compared to that. 90% is still 16,000 less revenue. Again, I would assume the numbers would be somewhere between 50 and 75 if everything goes well. So that's the reason that I wasn't willing to start signing TVR contracts and directed staff to begin to plan for something much smaller that was less risky, including only contracts that would allow us to cancel with some decent notice. Next slide. So those are the things that I've done. And so I've been asked about, council's role in this. I think you guys have been very clear on your budget direction and being conservative and making sure that we continue to build reserves. But there will be time for you guys to give me direction otherwise. You could leave the recommendations in place because most of those will be in the budget that we talk about in 2 weeks. Of course, from that one, Kirsten and I would make any changes that you guys recommend to bring back for a preliminary budget in June. But you could always fund the positions that I cut for next year. Again, filling them would be a city manager role, and I would not fill them until much later in the year until I made sure it came back. But again, one of my objectives has been to right size the organization. So I would be very particular about doing that. There is at least one of the positions that I'm a little, I thought that I'm a little concerned about, and that's the permit tech. As we start to get busy again in community development, that position will have to be brought back, but I don't know when that will be. Of course, you can direct me to fund TVR, and we'll try to figure out how to do it the safest measure possible. Again, I don't think it's the prudent thing to do, but of course, you guys can direct me to do otherwise, and I'll follow the will of the council there. And then the other thing that I may not have said, or I briefly said, was the chamber contract. I'm not recommending the traditional contract. I'll be bringing something else less traditional back to you that includes marketing for the city at a future date. But of course, you could direct me on any of these. So I just wanted to be clear that I did take some significant actions over the last couple of weeks that I felt like were the right thing to do for the city. But I work at the will and the pleasure of the council. And so I willingly put this on there to make sure that the council as a whole did not want me to do something different. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It's good to have the broad view on some of the actions that you've had to take here in the last few weeks. And these are obviously very difficult times. It's difficult for this council because there's a lot going on that we can't get together as a group and discuss. It's just challenging, I think, with technology being what it is. And it does show us too how really fragile we are, because we are basically 100% sales tax funded. And times like these are extremely challenging. So we have to take some pretty drastic steps to try to right the ship. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Corbin, for doing what you have done to make sure that you can still present this council with a balanced budget. We have a lot to think about now in the couple weeks leading up to our budget meetings. So I would recommend that you, reach out to Ron with any questions or concerns that you have on what he's presented, and we can come prepared to figure out how we want to get through this. These next couple months, and particularly next fiscal year, is going to be I think the biggest challenge. Which again, being sales tax based, it's really important that we come together to shout from the rooftops to get folks to, when it is safe to go out, and if you feel safe to get out, to please support our local economy. We really need it now more than ever, and there's a lot of businesses out there right now that would love to have your support, and that would just come right back to the city to help us. Yes.
I just wanted to add too, because you mentioned the sales tax and there's other options. We did get a letter from the county this week that said that they do not plan to fund, currently do not plan to fund stormwater. So they plan to use some of their other districts to help cover their balance, their budget. So even an organization like the county, who has multiple revenue sources, mostly property tax, I guess, for them, but they are also taking a significant hit in finding creative ways to cover their gaps, including a hiring freeze and those kinds of things. So, or at least they have turnover, a larger organization than we do. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Yeah, we are all in this together. I mean, everyone's going to feel the pain. I know there are other communities around us that aren't taking the drastic measures that we are now, but this is a fiscally conservative council, which is important. I think, especially again, given the circumstances we find ourselves in now, I would rather, get in front of this so that we don't wind up having to make some even more drastic cuts in the future. So I think it's wise and prudent to take the drastic actions that we are now. And again, thank you, Mr. Corbin, for making a lot of that happen. And I'm really looking forward to meeting with you all again soon in person, where we can have some discussions that just go a little more smooth. I think this is a challenge doing it like this. So appreciate our and Mr. Hodeggy, I really appreciate you being here this evening too.
I do have a question.
Yes, Ms. Wilton.
Just to go off the tagline, for lack of a better word, of getting ahead of this, it sounds like we really can't wait till May 21st. Is there such an idea as maybe to call an executive session to talk about some of these things in the budget that we need to talk about now?
If I can, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Wilden, we think we're good for the 21st. We have a balanced budget. Kirsten and I have been talking, of course, Rudy. We have a balanced budget to present to you. And the problem with any time sooner than the 21st, we really would like to see March's revenue numbers to see how close our guess is on revenue. So waiting until the 21st still gives us plenty of time. We could have multiple meetings in early June if we felt like we needed to meet to hash out some more stuff, but the revenue numbers aren't in yet. They should be in by the 21st, we hope, for March. So I don't mind waiting. I hope I don't steal Kirsten's thunder, but currently we're looking at a budget that the general fund portion is balanced at a 2% reduction. So last year we grew it by less than 2%, the general fund, and this year we have reduced the general fund by about 2% last time I talked to Kirsten. Still a lot of fluctuating things. We're still getting notice about transit. We may have transit covered from the feds. They might cover that. So we're hoping to hear soon about our FEMA grant. We have money set aside for a FEMA. So there's just lots of things. And I don't know that we'll have many more answers before the 21st if you guys don't mind waiting.
Well, the one thing that comes to mind is the TVR. And in other words, if we don't start working on it now, we're not gonna have it. Am I right?
We're gonna have an event. There's no doubt we're gonna have a TVR event. We're just not gonna get the national name, Moglion, and forgive those Moglion fans if I've mispronounced that.
Moglion.
They've already said yes, and they've got the dates saved. So we're looking at local bands or state bands or bands that don't require huge deposits. Part of the cost is the big stage. The big stage is about, I want to say 40,000. Rudy, free to correct me there, but it's about
That's correct.
$40,000. And the big name bands require big stages. Mogollon does not, so we can do it on a smaller scale and not have to spend so much money. So I think we can do something that's less risky. Whether people show up or not, it would be a less impact. But again, your guys' call. But I think we're going to have an event. I think Mogollon's going to be there. We just don't know the rest of it yet.
Thank you. And Mayor, if I may.
Yes, of
Hello.
course. Go ahead.
I appreciate everything that we just heard, Ron. Thank you and the team for your hard work during this crisis. However, these are not recommendations. These are cuts that have already been put in place that council would have to bring back as part of the budget process. In my opinion, determining how to address projected budget shortfalls caused by an emergency health crisis that affects this city in a budget that has not yet been approved. These are decisions that have to be discussed and made by council as a whole because they are policy decisions. I agree that management should submit recommendations, but these items have already been quote unquote eliminated already in this budget and proposed to be eliminated certain items for next fiscal year. This takes the budget process for next fiscal year out of council's hands. And I would like to discuss each of these items and let council as a whole determine how and where to meet the projected shortfall in response to this crisis, either at the next budget meeting or at a special meeting if time constraints require.
And I believe that's what he's recommending, is that when we get together on the 21st, we can discuss all the actions he's taken in regards to the budget, but we really need those numbers to come back from the state. I think Ron and his team are doing the best they can to anticipate how big our shortfall is going to be.
So why are we cutting positions where we don't have any idea what our projected shortfalls are? It is completely in our city manager's purview to eliminate positions for reasons that are daily operations. However, when it's in response to a health crisis, is that the message we as a council choose to send to our staff and to our community? I personally do not believe it is. For me, it is not my response. I would have rather been able to address other ways to be able to rally together as a team and as a community and as a council and staff to address these shortfalls. We don't have good data, and yet we're making decisions out of what, panic or some other irrational process. I completely hear what you're saying. I just completely disagree. I could not disagree more.
Okay.
And I think that tends to make sense. It's logical.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wilden, could you clarify?
It tends to make sense. It's logical of what Councilmember Henry just said. And maybe I'm the only one that thinks that. If anybody else would, speak their mind, that would be great.
Just to make sure I'm clear, you're saying that it's logical to get go ahead.
I think it's logical for us to get together and do it as a council and discuss it in depth as opposed to reacting. If that makes sense.
It does now. Thank you. Any other council members have anything?
Well, yes, Mr. Mayor, it's Jackie. I'm agreeing with what I'm hearing from Councilmember Henry and Wilden. And I really think that waiting till the 21st is a little long to wait to really have these discussions. So I would be in favor of a special meeting sometime sooner to begin the discussions.
Agree.
Mr. Mayor.
I didn't quite catch who agreed, but yes, sir. Is
I
that
did,
Mr. Holst?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, I would agree with the comments that have been made. I'm very uncomfortable with decisions being made on less than full information, especially when we're affecting jobs. and we're terminating people before we actually know where we sit. It would seem to me that terminations could be done at a later date. If there's concern at the moment, we could have done furloughs for people and bring them back under a furlough. Terminations are pretty difficult and not really appropriate under the circumstance, in my opinion.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute here. Okay. Councilmember Hodeggy, did you have any comments?
No, sir.
Am I missing Vice Mayor?
Oh, sure. And I don't disagree with any of the sentiments that I've heard there, but I do stand by and support just difficult decisions that have had to be made. Nobody wants to make those. We would have loved to have breezed through this without touching any of these points. And it's difficult. And I wouldn't want to be in that position, and I'm really glad that I'm not in that position. So for the most part, I support what the managers had to do. I'm willing to give him a long leash. And I don't disagree with the sentiment of other council members that think that we should have some say in it all. It's difficult. This thing has come up on us quickly and has tanked our economy and our revenues really quickly. I mean, we're still reeling. Like you said, we don't know the extent of it. I understand that it might actually be worse than what we're looking at. I would hope that this thing comes back as soon as as quickly as it went down. But I don't know. It's kind of unprecedented. It's going to be interesting to watch. So those are my comments.
And I agree with everybody, but it's not too late. What's wrong with getting together and discussing this a little more in depth?
I think, I would absolutely support us doing that. I think we know that our revenues are down. We don't know how down they are, and so we're relying on the experts that we have to try to forecast, our decline in revenues, which will directly impact our budget. I think we've pressed the state to see if they could please assist and get those numbers back to us more quickly. They don't. There's a 2-month lag, and that's that. And 2 months is life or death for some of these businesses. So, we are unfortunately flying somewhat blind here. But if we want to meet again as a council and get into this in more detail, that's absolutely fine. We're just not going to have the information that we need to make those decisions. And I think that's really what Ron and his team would like to provide us so that we can make those challenging decisions. We have many, many more facing us, many, many more challenges facing us. I believe we're at the front end of this. The healthcare crisis, I'm hoping, will be over, in the months to come. The economic crisis is something we're going to be dealing with and reeling from, I believe, for definitely the next fiscal year, if not longer. So many challenging decisions face us. If we want to get together sooner, I'm sure that we can put together a meeting, but we're just not going to have the data. And Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state is just not releasing our numbers yet, so we know where our revenues are coming in. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. And Rudy can attest to that if you'd like, but we won't know. We're hoping we'll have it by the 21st. Remember, for any meeting, we have to post it. So that's actually only 2 weeks away. And so we still gives plenty of time for council to direct me to do something different. Again, hoping to have a little better numbers. I will say that the numbers, Kirsten has been pretty close to being right all the years she's been doing it. Her numbers were compared to Deputy Manager Rodriguez's numbers. So the numbers that we have right now, we feel good about, but we really won't know for sure until we go through the process. It's one of the reasons that the city of Cottonwood waits till July to actually approve their budget, is to really get that last set of revenue numbers. I'm used to coming from a place that does a property tax, and you have to do it much earlier in the process. So we wait as long as we can to have the best numbers, but we could do it late next week if council really wanted, versus 2 weeks from Thursday night. The other reason for waiting is to allow for in-person meetings. I'm assuming that the governor is going to allow group meetings of 10 or thereabouts starting on the 15th. So the thought was we would have our first council meeting on the 19th in person at the clubhouse with social distancing in place, wide tables, those kinds of things. And then the following Thursday, we would have an in-person budget discussion. So that was the other little side effect, is to get us off this these go-to meetings and get us to meeting in person to discuss the budget.
If you don't mind, Mayor, I'd like to chime in. I think the part of the presentation that Ron put out there, I think, was really important, key to, by stating that the items that have been removed, and that it'll be a council's prerogative if they want to make changes to that particular budget and add those items back in, which we can. So there's still an opportunity for council to help us build the budget the way they feel like for next fiscal year. So we've still got some opportunity. We've still got the tentative coming up, and we've still got the some time for the final to get done. So, and we'd love to have the council's input on what has currently happened and also what's going to happen for the next fiscal year.
Well, maybe I'm wrong in that I thought I heard it's too late, not too late, but it's getting too late to do some of these things that we need to do. I've been hearing from hotel owners that what's the fastest way for us to get back in shape for our businesses, for our hotels, for our restaurants. And in my mind, it's an event. And it would be an event that has use of discretionary income, because we're not going to get people up here that don't have discretionary income. So, you know, what is that? And that's the logical part that I'm thinking is that's TVR in whatever form that is.
Mr. Mayor, if I can add, and Steve Horton can correct us if we're too far off topic here, but so back to the hotel comment, we're working on several things, including we are looking at putting an ad with Eric Jurison in the Phoenix magazine for June. I think they've changed their publication because they're having trouble as a magazine. So we're partnering with Eric to do a full page ad to advertise Cottonwood this summer. We are looking at an event late in May that highlights our downtown. I haven't announced it yet because we haven't finished meeting to put the plans together, but we're looking at possibly maybe even a car show that you do a car drive show, either a window or a, we met with the OTA earlier today, Trisha, our economic development, and looked at a program for late May. Then we've got an event in June where we're looking at doing a drive-in to really celebrate community. And then we have July 4th, and then we do have TVR. The biggest draw for TVR was, and I always say the name wrong, Moglion, but they're the biggest draw and we've got them. So we can do something much lower and still get the state draw, we think, without putting much risk into it. So we're working on several events that will highlight Old Town, that will partner. We're looking at advertising and those kinds of things. So we are actively behind the scenes working on bringing people back to Cottonwood as soon as we can. Very different than, I believe, Sedona's approach, which is a little slower and a little more methodical about inviting people up. But we are working with folks, including the chamber, to see what we can do to get the advertising going, including radio ads, which will start back up in June, Phoenix Magazine ad that'll start this summer, and those kinds of things. So we're working on it.
So then, council, what's your pleasure here? Would you like to meet sooner, knowing that we won't have all the numbers in from the state on what our March revenues look like? Or would you like to hold off, meet on the 21st? I don't think there's anything too late that we can't, add back in. But we don't know until we have those numbers.
I would agree with that. We really have to have those numbers so that we can determine where we're at, and we need to meet in person.
You know, I got all the time in the world. So I'll meet anytime. Come to my house. I don't care. I just think we need to meet.
Mr.
Hodeggy, I didn't quite hear that. Mr. Hodeggy, are you there? Did you say?
He's muted.
Hey, Mr. Hodeggy, we can't hear you, sir. I feel like you just said the most important thing in the world, and we all missed it. Can you repeat what you said there, Councilmember Hodeggy? Oh,
we need to get his microphone on.
Yeah, it looks like he's getting some tech support there. Other council members, Mr. Holst, how do you feel?
I think we need to discuss these issues. I have one question. I was given to understand by one of the committee members for the TVR that their last meeting, Jack informed them that TVR had been canceled and that TVR in the future would not be sponsored or supported by the city, that they would have to go outside the city for the sponsorship for the TVR event if it were ever to occur again. And I'd like to have some clarification on where he got that information and then disseminated it.
Well, he did not say that. I was at the meeting. I was there. That was not said at all. What was said that for this year, that I was not going to start signing the contracts for the large events, for the large musician and the stage without an out clause for COVID. I thought that was irresponsible of a city manager to sign a contract we can't get out of before we even know what September looks like. If there was another organization that wanted to take that risk and sponsor it this year, we would be happy to. Jack himself has been dying to do this event. He was so looking forward to this. He would never say such a thing. And then for going forward, we're all hoping that the next year it comes back stronger than ever. There were members who were concerned that once you skip a year, it takes another year, it takes a little bit longer to get back to where we were. But the staff, Jack and everybody on there, want nothing more than to do a TVR. But again, I won't sign a contract that I think is risky for the city, especially when we can do it at a lower cost. And when we talk to the Law Tiger folks, they're seeing this all across the country. It's a national chain, and they've seen all of their events moved or canceled or changed. So the Law Tigers absolutely understood and said they would love to partner with us no matter what we do. And depending on the size of the event would determine their contribution level, which was going up to $12,000, which is just a small portion of the total cost of the project. But they understood, and no one said we were never doing Law Tigers again. We talked about maybe doing a wine event this year, maybe doing it. He called it a Jack called it a TVR light. It was really a chance to relook at things, but I think that whoever said that misheard Jack, because I did not hear that at all from the team.
Thank you, Ron. I just wanted clarification. I realize it was something said outside of the committee and I wasn't present, so appreciate your clarification.
Okay, so unless I hear otherwise, I think we're going to go ahead and keep our in-person budget meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from Thursday. If there's any information the staff can get to council sooner than that, it would be much appreciated so we can start to digest the changes that have occurred, the actions that the city manager and his team have taken to get our budget within what they anticipate the revenues shortfall will be, and present us a balanced budget so that we can start to digest those documents and come prepared again in a couple of weeks. And we feel like we're still being proactive and doing all we can in the meantime before that meeting, unless I hear otherwise. Does that seem like a reasonable plan?
Okay, by me. You may hear from me, just so you know.
I'm available to meet sooner. I'm also available at the currently scheduled in-person budget meetings. I just have the same concern if staff is going to continue making decisions for a projected budget next year that are already effective that then council will have to undo. I would rather meet sooner instead of that. However, if we're not going to see that until the budget meetings, then I'm okay with meeting at the regularly scheduled time.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Henry, I don't expect any more significant changes at this time. And if it does, I will talk to the mayor about setting up an emergency executive session or something if something like that happens. But the governor does seem to be relaxing things. Restaurants should be going back soon. Retail should open up on Friday, restaurants on Monday. So I'm hoping that we're back to some norm. The only thing that would trigger anything, but it would happen at the 21st, is if the numbers for March came in lower than we expected. But that would be discussed at the 21st.
And that's fair. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll stick with that plan. And I just want to thank all the council for being patient as we work our way through this. This has been, there isn't any playbook really on how we get through something like this. And these are the same conversations that I think are going to be taking place across our state, really across the nation. We're going to be faced with some very challenging times. So those of you that went out and gathered enough signatures to get on the ballot, I hope you don't question why you did that, because we're going to need you now more than ever, for sure. And again, I completely understand where the council is coming from in feeling like some serious, significant changes have occurred at the city, particularly in having to let some folks go. That's difficult. Even just being furloughed is extremely challenging on individuals, families. It's hard to see that happen and feel like we are the elected leaders in our community. We haven't been able to be a part of making those decisions. These decisions happened quickly. I think they happened for fiscally responsible reasons. I want to thank Ron and his team for working together through what must have been a very challenging string of decisions. And again, just remind council that we are the elected leaders. We are the ultimate say in the budget, and we will get together very soon and set a course of action. So if there's nothing else, I believe next on the agenda is claims and adjustments, and I would move to pay the claim.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, and I do not know who seconded it. Hopefully our clerk caught that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. I think that was Councilmember Holst that seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.